So it's been a minute since we flipped some records into a beat here on the channel. So today we're gonna hit up a couple local record stores and see what they've got, but let's get into it. All right, so we're back in the studio and I may have overdone it a little at both of those shops. And so since we have this many, I'm thinking we're just gonna choose a couple. So I really like the artwork in this one and on this one. So let's get these on the record player and see what we find. So this right here is a perfect spot we could chop up for our melodic sounds. We don't have any drums, so it would be very easy to chop. You don't have to worry about when the snare and the kick are hitting. And I think this sax record might be perfect for a lead layer on top. So I have this drum loop, then I have this bongo from one of the other vinyls, and then the last two samples I have today are from the saxophone. We have this kalimba, and then some sax sounds that I think will be perfect. Now I don't think we can do like a 16 level like we could on the SP where we just hit 16 velocity, but we can do some velocity changes per step. So I think we might be able to do that. So let's get started by chopping up the drums. That's usually where I like to start. So we're gonna go to Shift G, which is shift voice. We're going to go over to chop. There it is. And I think we'll do 16. Let's see what that sounds like. Sometimes I start with 8, but I have a feeling this is a bit of a longer sample and I want more isolated sounds. Okay, so perfect. We have 3 different kicks already. I really like that chop, actually. That worked really well. What we'll do is just put a sort of click track down using a different hi-hat. Let's hear what that sounds like. That's a terrible hi-hat. Wow. But we don't have to stick with it. It's more just a click track. And I actually put in all the 8th notes. Let's shut off that terrible hi-hat. Let's get that off and see what we've got. We're gonna drop the BPM a little bit. Okay, so rather than just redoing it, I think what we'll do is just go into the nudge, which is, I wanna say that's the T. It's been quite a while since I've used the P-6, but we'll know in a second once I nudge this. Yep, it's T for time. So we don't want that much. And then let's move this one as well. I'm just gonna put these a little off the grid. Now I really wish, one thing, if we ever get an update for the P-6, letting us hold down multiple at once would be a massive, like hold down multiple pads or steps at once and alter them all the same. That would be a huge addition. But I don't know, I'd be curious if you think the P-6 is gonna get an update. I've seen in my comments before, a lot of people were saying no, and a lot of people are hopeful that it will. It's been almost a year, and I don't think there's been much, if any, updates. There might have been 1 or 2 bug fixes or quality of life. Okay, that's better. But I'm gonna put those snares just a little bit, let's put them early. Sometimes it's nice to get the snares just a little early. We'll keep this snare actually locked in where it is. So that way, this first kick and the last snare, the second snare, ground everything back together. Let's leave that there. And then I want to do some filtering and stuff like that, but let's get to the samples first. Now we've got our kalimba, which I think might be something to put in Granular later. The sax I really don't think is what I want to lead with. I want to almost use that as a sort of accessory. So that leaves us with this. So I think we'll chop this sample up and see where it takes us. Maybe, let's try 16. We had good luck with the drums, so let's try 16 one more time and see what we got. Okay, so the first thing I think we'll do before that is actually extend these steps to probably 64. So I gotta remember how to do the duplicate. This is why I have my P6 cheat sheet ready. So hold Shift plus copy, and then we're gonna slide over to duplicate. There we go. That's why it's nice to have a cheat sheet. So it's always good to have something, whether it's someone else's or your own, that you make. Let's do it one more time. So we made it 32 steps. We're gonna do it one more time to make it 64. And then since we've only recorded or sequenced the drums so far, now the drums will play multiple. Now let's get this song going. That works. Okay, now let's go into filter and let's add a filter to this one. I'd almost say a low pass, but then I'm thinking if we do this high pass, we might be able to up the bass. That's up the resonance. There's a little trick you can do with the high pass filter, even though it sounds counterintuitive. If you up the resonance and then bring down the cutoff to the low end, you can actually emphasize. Hear how the low end actually gets brought up? Let's go back to the resonance and you'll see. So if I take off the resonance, it cuts the low end. But hear how much there is now? I mean, it's clipping. But that's a high pass, so it's intended to cut the low end. But what we're doing, we're using that resonance bump or that resonance peak to actually bring out the bass, because I'm too lazy to actually do a bass part. And there's a really cool bass line in this that's playing underneath perfectly with the chop. So you just want to find kind of where the peak is going to bring out the bass the most, or at least where you want it to be. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we want to do on this track. See, I'm so tempted to add delay and reverb, but I do not like the routing of the send effects on here because, well, actually we're going into the SP, so it's not a problem. But if we were using these effects, they're separate from the sends. So the sends don't get hit by the effects. So if you do things like stutter, whatever's going into the send effects just keep playing like normal, and then whatever your dry audio is actually gets the stutter effect. It's or DJ effects loop or whatever you want to call it. It's so annoying. That's something I'd also really like to see in an update. Fix that, but we have to do with what we have. But since I've got the SP here and we can cheat to use that for effects at the end when we're jamming, let's actually do some delay and reverb. So let's go send delay, we'll add a little bit of that, and then send reverb and we'll add a little bit of that. And then I don't know, I always like to add reverb to my samples. It's especially cool if you can then put some kind of like sidechain on it. But I just like it kind of bouncing around a little more, and then you get all those sample chops interacting more with each other, you know, like bouncing around a little bit. So I always like that. And then I think the reverb will make some changes to that. Let's actually take out some low end on the delay and reverb. I think we're also going to fix that one high note has like some clipping on it. Let's add a mod reverb. I'm surprised I remember this much on the P-6 after not having used it so long. Oh, that mod reverb sounds good. Yeah, let's put a pretty high reverb cut because the bass is in this sample, so I don't want the reverb getting a lot of that bass. And then we'll actually put some high cut on it too. I always find when you cut the high end of just the reverb, it adds a lot of warmth to the sample. And then we'll just alter. No, we'll leave that one. Okay, I think we're gonna leave everything else where we're at. Oh yeah, we've got these bongos. Let's cut out a little bit of the start. That's actually a pretty good cut. So let's just put something in and we'll do some volume changes. I'm just gonna put this really faint in the mix. And I will add that lo-fi to that. All those little vinyl crackles always add such a nice little vibe to the idea you're going with. All right, I want to figure out where to go next. We've got our sax and then the kalimba. So I'm still feeling like that kalimba would sound really cool in the Granular engine if we could get it to work. Let's start with this sax. So I'm trying to find a part. I'm finding that kind of like, that's it. Actually, we might be able to do like a really bootleg 16 velocity by just controlling, if we can automate the volume. That might be what we're gonna do. But this will be fun. Whoop. Let's just start over and do it. Let's see if this will work. Okay, that worked. So yeah, we don't get a 16 velocity button, at least that I remember. I'm pretty sure we don't, but we do get really easy automation recording. So if you look like really close, I'll zoom in. The volume knob or the level knob for this sample is actually set to 0. And yet we actually have the sample playing because we did record automation. One of the best parts about the P6, especially compared to the SP, is per pad filters. So you can do some EQ, but also just like filtering. Let's set the type, actually. That's one of the annoying parts. You have to set the type. We'll put it real faint in the mix, but we will up that resonance a little. And then let's add some delay and reverb to that one. I mean, I'd be really happy with this beat as it stands. I probably want to add another lead though. Let's try the granular engine here. So pattern and granular, and then you select the pad you want to set to granular. That's our granular sound. We've got the volume up, and then we're gonna go to shift voice, which is G, and then we'll have a bunch of granular options over here. Here we go. Head position we'll leave at 0. Head speed though, let's move that up a little bit, and then let's go out of that. Spread, I'm not going to change the spread. Grains though, we'll up the grains. Actually, we dropped the grains. Grain shape, that's going to act like kind of an LFO when you're at 50. It goes like up and down like a triangle LFO. So it cleans it up a little bit when you do it that way. Grain size, add some reverse. All right, and then what's that one? TNJ is what? Timing jitter. Yeah, I don't usually add that. And then this one, the GKYF, is the really weird one. So we set it down, and then in keyboard, I think the pitch won't change. Let's actually do some spread. Oh, that's trippy. All right, let's stick with that for now. Whoa. Okay, we're gonna see if we can use that. Could just have that in the background. But I think we're gonna call this track here. I actually really like it. There's something about sampling with vinyl. It's just so inspiring, right? And of course there's copyright issues and all that stuff. It's not necessarily something I would ever consider releasing, but it's a lot of fun to take something, even your own samples that like from your own other songs or something like that, and just put it into a sampler and chop it up, because it gets you thinking outside of the normal chord progressions that you would normally revolve around. And it's great to get out of those comfort zones and then look back on it and go, oh, how did that work? And then you can analyze it if you want and figure out these different things you're doing and then incorporate that into your own music. Anyways, I think with that, we'll just do a quick jam. I'm gonna figure out where we're gonna go with this jam. So one of my favorite things with the P6 is the quick mutes. So we've got drums, the bongos. We didn't use the kalimba. 4 is empty. 5 is our sax, and that's our sample. So I think we'll start with the sample and maybe like a filter rise, and then we'll bring in the drums, and we're just gonna go from there. Ah, see, This, real quick, is the thing I wanted to discuss though. The filter's completely on, but you hear how it's not cutting out what's in the send effects? That's my biggest issue with the P6. The send effects are after and separate, completely separate from the main effects, like the bus effect. So if you put anything in the send effects, that will sound normal no matter what effect you do to the actual sample. So that's my biggest issue with the P6, and one thing I really hope we see fixed in an update. Put the send effects before the main effects so that they're treated by those effects as well. It really becomes a problem if you start doing like effects looper or delays and things. It just, yeah, it's a big issue for me at least. So with that, we're just gonna play through the track using the quick mutes to make the jam. And all of these samples are up for channel members at the Solar Sailor tier. You can hit the join button below if you want to get that and a whole bunch of other perks. And if you want to see how to make the most out of the Granular engine, I have a follow along tutorial with a free sample pack on this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.